Fireside Chats. Today, we're going to be bringing Heather Beaver on. Heather is a cyclist, a writer, a mom, and a lover of all things growth, motivation, and inspiration. Heather was featured in our November-December issue of our magazine. If you've read the article, you'll recognize the name. But I'm super excited to bring her on. I've learned so much from her in our handful of conversations that we've had so far, and she's going to be a great guest. So let me bring Heather forward, and we'll get started. Hey, Heather, welcome to our 101st episode of our Fireside Chats. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
I am fantastic. Please forgive me. I'm trying to make sure that we're able to get all of this technology working. We are live now on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So for those of you, wherever you're watching us, please be sure to comment or ask questions as we're going through our conversation with Heather, which I want to take us to the very first time you and I chatted. I didn't know anything about you, and I wanted to get to know you a little bit. And you told me that in 2019, we connected on this, the idea that we both had quit drinking. I was a little bit before 2019, but and what you said to me was you were able to see life more clearly. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and how quitting drinking gave you that vision, that clearer vision, I should say.
Thanks. Well, drinking sort of crept up on me, which, I think it does for a lot of people, but trying to deal with the stress of everyday life. And I have twins who are in school, one of whom had some struggles. He has a learning disability. And so trying to sort of cope with day-to-day stuff, my drinking crept up over the years, and to the point where I realized, wow, I really don't feel good. I feel like I'm starting to use this as a way to kind of manage my stress level, which was, using an addictive substance to manage stress is probably not the best way to go about it. So I knew that I wanted to change something. I knew I wanted to feel better. I knew I wanted to be more present to my kids and more present to myself. So it took me probably, I would say, 3 years. I would do dry January. I would quit for periods of time, and then finally, once I turned 50, because I turned 50 in 2019. I said, that's it. This is not what I want for myself going forward. And I was able to make it stick. So, and I don't miss it at all. It does force you to confront a lot of the things that you have kind of been avoiding by saying, oh, it was a stressful day. I don't feel like thinking about that anymore. I'll go pour myself a glass of wine.
Yep.
And when you don't drink, you got to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to deal with this? So it's forced me to find a lot of different things. One of which has been cycling. I had been cycling before drinking, but once I stopped drinking, cycling became a great way for me to manage my stress and to also learn more about myself. And as I shifted my energy from drinking to cycling, my cycling performance took off. And for anyone who knows about bike training, about functional threshold power.
Yeah.
Which is also known as FTP. My FTP went from, I think, around 170 or 175 up to 210, 215, 217, which is huge, like a 25%
Huge.
increase. Yeah.
When you saw those increases on the cycling side,
Mm-hmm.
did you then become, and I'm going to put in air quotes, addicted to that? Like it was like, okay, the quitting drinking has definitely benefited this, and I'm addicted to performance improvements, and I'm going to keep focusing on that.
Um, no, it wasn't necessarily performance. What I always loved about cycling was how strong I feel on the bike, and I feel most myself when I'm riding my bike. I feel most connected to myself. So I wouldn't say I got addicted to performance, although it's always really nice to, to get a good race result or get, improve your training in some way and get stronger. But um, it was validating in that it connected me more to myself when drinking had progressively disconnected me from myself.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
it was self fulfilling in that way, or self sustaining, I guess.
So if you feel more like yourself on the bike and now you're no longer drinking, like clarity in the moment when you're riding your bike, were you like problem solving life's issues constantly while you were out there? All of a sudden, it was like coming at you.
Well, that's interesting you asked that because, of course, right after 2019, as I healed from drinking, then the pandemic hit at the beginning of 2020. And I was on my bike all the time during the pandemic, as a way to get out of the house because we were all packed into the house. And I was like, just get me out of here and, give me some space to think. So, yeah, it did help. But it also, like, riding my bike often is meditative for me because it brings all parts of me together. It brings my mind together, it brings my body together, and I guess, you think of it in terms of mindfulness or mind body connection. That's what it does for me. So
You know, it's in,
uh, go ahead.
I was going to say you use the word meditation in the conversations we've had, and I feel like when I talk to other people, they just use the word, but they don't practice it. But you practice it, and when we were in the green room, we were talking that you had just gone on a yoga meditation retreat, and I'm
Mhm.
fascinated by this because it's not something I've ever done. I don't know that I would ever do it, but I'd love to learn more about it. Like when you go on this yoga meditative retreat, what's it like? What do you hope to get out of it, and what do you get out of it?
Yeah, it was not yoga. I did some yoga on the side while I was there to help, I guess, keep myself aligned, mind, body. But it was just a meditation retreat. It was 5 days and it was silent. So once you arrive and you check in and you have your first meal, and you go to the first meditation session, which started, I think, at 7 p.m. at night. Then the silence lasts until the last day, and it's broken at the last meal. And this is run by the retreat was run by the local meditation center that I practice at, and it there are a couple of monks from Thailand, from the forests of Thailand, who teach this particular kind of meditation. So there were three monks who were leading this, and only one of them spoke English very well. So they would give instructions and talks in between the meditation sessions, and some of them would be in Thai and then translated into English. But it's um, such a different way of being because it's all about watching your thoughts. At least this style of meditation, which is called vipassana or insight. So you sit and you allow whatever's happening in your brain to happen, and you just watch it. So you watch your brain sort of think about, I feel like having chips, or I feel, I wonder if so and so is mad at me from something I said the other day, or, whatever is coming up. But you don't attach any meaning to it, and you just watch it, and you realize that thoughts just come and go all day long, and they don't necessarily mean anything. Like, they'll stick to you if you think it's interesting, or if you think something hurtful, and then you kind of get upset about it or worried about it. So it's been such a really interesting practice in terms of my cycling, because it's made what I've always struggled with is mindset and speaking constructively to myself when I am in the middle of a difficult effort. And my tendency in the past had always been to kind of, give up or say, oh, this is too hard, or is it worth it, or I can't do this. And with the meditation, I'm very much getting a sense by watching my thoughts of saying, oh, this thought came up. How did I feel about that? Or what did that, you know, did that energize me or did that really crush my motivation? So I'm able to take these principles from meditation and really apply them when I'm trying to accomplish something on my bike.
So when you're engaging in this meditative practice and watching your thoughts when you're on the bike, does it tend to happen mostly in a hard area or while you're coasting? Like, when does it seem to happen the most?
It definitely happens when I'm being pushed to my limits. And that could be on a group ride if I'm with people who are stronger than me and I've really got to give everything I have just to hold on to those wheels and not get dropped. Or it happens when I'm on a really tough hill climb. It happened to me on Mount Washington last year when there was some really bad weather and I it was a huge struggle, and I would like to say that I won against my thoughts, but I didn't because I was so terrified of being blown off the mountain, and I could not. I couldn't get past those thoughts, and perhaps that was a good thing because it kept me safe. Um, but it was disappointing, and then it was hard to manage the thoughts of that disappointment afterwards. But again, the meditation practice teaches you that they're just thoughts.
The meditation practice, we kind of jumped forward, so I want to rewind for a second. Were you practicing meditation when you had the breast cancer scare? Was that part of your process in life at that point already?
Yes, definitely. I've been practicing meditation probably for, I would say, 7 or 8 years. But it's only in the last couple of years that I have found this meditation center and started going regularly and started to develop a daily morning meditation practice. But it was definitely a big part of my life when I had a bad mammogram and it turned out to be breast cancer. I think that was December of 2020. Um, because, well, also partly to deal with the treatment, to deal with the surgery, to deal with all the MRIs, to deal with, all of the scans and trying to wait for news. Because meditation can help you calm your body, and feelings and emotions actually are energy. So by calming the body, you calm the energy, and it in turn calms your thinking. So it helped a great deal, actually. And also understanding that your thoughts can either pull you back into the past or they can pull you forward into the future. And there's nothing that I personally could do about the cancer. I was already getting all the care that I needed. So, I did have to think or confront the fact about dying. But I guess I'm able to let go of that. It's hard to explain. I'll have to think about that a little bit. But um, it's going to be what it's going to be, and nothing that I do that I'm not already doing is going to change anything. And worrying is only going to make my body more turbulent and my mind more turbulent and make it that much harder to endure. Like the more you resist, the more difficult everything seems.
Yeah.
And I feel that way not only with cancer, but also, on the bike with really hard efforts. You know, we're all so afraid of pain, and it hurts, but over time, like the more you have pain, the more afraid of it you become. And when you're afraid of it, it creates this resistance which actually makes you tense up and makes it hurt more. So every time I'm in the middle of a really hard interval, or if I'm on the mountain and things start to hurt and I feel myself tensing up, I just try and stay present with my body and my thoughts, and I think, oh, this is only pain. I know what I can do, and I can do this. I've done all sorts of things, and I've done worse. And that's, there's a difference between, an injury kind of a pain, right? Like
Right.
that,
Correct.
you
Correct.
need to stop, right? But this hurts. I'm working really hard. I want to stop is a different kind of pain.
It's interesting because I was just having a conversation yesterday with Lori about risk. And I think we can use risk and pain sort of interchangeably here. As we get older, we have more knowledge and experience. So you would think you would be less risk averse as you get older. And so, as a cyclist, as an endurance athlete, as you go through these sports and you've done the hard things, you would think you would say to yourself, well, I've done the hard things. I can continue to do the hard things or do harder things. But the opposite tends to happen. And I can't figure out for the life of me why that is. Because when you're younger, you're like, I've got all the time in the world. I'll go take a risk and do X, Y, and Z. But you don't have the knowledge or the experience to build off of. And yet you're still willing to do it. And so I just like, how did, like, I, this was on my mind all day yesterday. It's on my mind again still today. But I think it's interchangeable with pain when it comes to sport, right? I refuse to race 5Ks. Why? Because they hurt. But sign me up for a 100 miler, 50 miler, 250 miler, put me on a bike for, a century ride, and I'm cool with it. But, a 25-minute 5K, and I'm like, no chance. Don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to get hurt.
My gosh, wow. That's pretty amazing.
Right? Like, so, but for you, right, you're climbing Mount Washington, and I read the article before we came live on the show, and it's a 7.6 mile climb that's averaging about 12 to 12.5%, right, all the way up to this top. And I just thought to myself, like, that would be cool. Like, you're grinding, that sure, you want to get there as fast as you can, but if you just keep turning the pedals, you're going to get there, right?
Hmm.
And I can deal with that pain. Whereas in a 5K, or if you're on a circuit, right, like a crit circuit, like you're just blowing and going the whole entire time. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, so for you, what's it about dealing with the pain that you're like, I'm going to go climb Mount Washington? Like, I want to do that.
Oh, that's so interesting. I never thought of it that way. And, for the record, I hate 5Ks too, because I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack during
Right.
them. Like,
See?
I run for cross training, but I'm not a particularly talented runner. My husband's a really good runner, but and I have done crits, and it's so interesting you say that, because what I part of what I was doing when I started to get into cycling was I did some practice crits at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, which were really fun and super addictive. Um, Crits are a little bit different in that you do get to rest and back off. There are moments where you're completely redlining like you are in a 5K, but it's not the whole time. And there's a lot of strategy about how to
Right.
get good position and stuff like that. So I actually found that addictive and really exciting. And had signed up for a couple of races that year too. But I wound up having three crashes, two of them in races. So, in terms of risk, to go back a little bit more, I decided that at age 55, I'm not willing to take the risk of group racing, because I separated my shoulder pretty badly. If I fall again, I'm probably going to need surgery, and that is just not worth it to me. But I
Right.
can go out and do things like hill climbs or do grand fondos, and sort of test my legs and see what my strength and power is against other people without the danger of crashing that is so much higher in crits and road races. But how do I manage that pain? I think it's probably very similar to you and your ultras, because it's painful. But my strategy is, I know I just really feel into my body and how my body's doing, And I always bring it back to form. Like if you think about some sports like swimming, swimming is highly
Yeah,
dependent on form. The better your form, the faster you will go. And
absolutely.
hill climbing is also highly related to form because as you get tired, your form goes.
Right.
But there are some people, like, it was so interesting during the race because my coach gave me such great advice, which is you know your body and you know your pacing, and just go out and have your own race, and don't worry about what anybody else is doing. So I had that in my head among a bunch of other things when I went out there. And I went out and I started steady at my own pace, and a bunch of people kind of took off and passed me. And there were a couple of people that were kind of, we were playing chicken a little bit. They'd pass me, and then I'd keep going steady, and I'd wind up passing them. And as a female cyclist, I've definitely noticed that some guys get ticked off when I pass them. So there were a couple of those guys on the course, and they'd get pissed off, and they'd, muscle it past back up and pass me. But the last time I passed them, I didn't see them again. So it's a grind.
That's
I
it.
know what I'm capable of. I know what my numbers are. I keep a very close watch on what my heart rate is doing. I know how long I can hold different things. And I just go to my capacity within my numbers.
Were
And
you
it
always a
hurts.
natural?
What's that?
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask, were you always a natural climber, or was that a skill that you've developed over the years through all the cycling that you do?
Um, that's funny because when I was a kid, I had a really old, heavy 10 speed bike. This was back in the 70s, like the late 70s, early 80s. And in order to see my friends or to get to the pool I belonged to, I had to climb this big hill. And for months or perhaps even a couple of years, I walked it. And then one day I remember being really pissed off, like, I'm sick of walking this thing. I'm going to see if I can ride it, right? And I just said, "Screw it," and I just did it. And I got to the top, and I was surprised. I was like, "Wow, I was able to do that," right? Um, so have I always been a hill climber? I always remember that because it was such a seminal moment for me as a kid and as a cyclist, I guess. And one thing that made me feel like I loved my bike because I can do hard things on it. But I wasn't planning to be a hill climber. No, I was planning to do road racing. And it was at the Killington Stage Race, which is a pretty big road race, a 3-day stage race in the U.S. And I crashed the first day, and with a third-degree separated shoulder, I couldn't do road races anymore. So I was talking to my coach, like, what am I going to do? And she said, well, you can do hill climbs, you can do time trials. And I was already signed up for Mount Washington, so I thought, all right, well, I'll see what I can do. And after having, dealt with the cancer and dealt with my kids who really had a tough time with the pandemic and needed a lot of help. And after quitting drinking, my marriage needed a lot of work, and my husband and I were doing a lot of work on that. And I was so kind of I had so many adverse things going on that I'd been working through that I just said, all right, well, with all of this crap that I've been through, what's a mountain? Like, forget this. I'm just going to go up and do it. And I had the same attitude that I had when I was that 10-year-old kid climbing that. Um, so I did it, and I got to the top, and my husband was up there, and he said, you were the first woman with a green bib. And I said, what? And he said, I think you were the first woman in your age group. And I said, no, I said, I've never won anything. Right. So I was wrapped in my blanket because they give you a big blanket at the top of the mountain because it's cold. And I took my picture next to the Mount Washington sign. And then we waited for everyone to get to the top. And then all the cars went down to the bottom. We had the ceremony and they called my name, and I was on the top space of the podium. And I was like, wow, and now, like, I'm not gonna go out and win a hill climb because 'cause I'm 55, I'm not 25, the 25-year-old women are winning it, but
Right.
I seem to steadily do really pretty well in my age group. I had a lot of age group wins last year, and when I climb on Zwift, I seem to, for some reason, do really well at it, and particularly well at the really steep grades of, like, 15%, 20%. Um, and I've always known I was strong, but I guess this is how my the you know my body is able to apply that strength really efficiently. So
Did winning your age group at Mount Washington put pressure on you to perform when you went back out on the bike at different events? Or are you capable of compartmentalizing that because you go through, you meditate and I will tell you, like, one of the things I love talking about you is I learn more about myself mentally when I talk to you about putting things in their proper places. And so I wonder, for you, for yourself, if winning your age group put pressure on you and you're able to compartmentalize it because you do practice these meditation and these techniques to help put things in their proper places. And how do you react to winning and going out again for the next events?
right. The biggest thing I'll say about that is that it's a practice because when you win something, it activates your ego. So your ego wants to keep winning, right?
Right.
So winning feels good. And I was signed up for Mount Washington again last year, but it didn't happen because of weather. But last year I was really struggling with my mental state because there were people signed up in my age group that I knew were really strong and that I would have a tough time beating or even coming close to for some of them. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, do I really want to go out here and do this against these people because I'm going to get shown up, right? But so I had to kind of go back to what is my why. And you guys have a really good article about that on your
Yeah.
website as well. You have a bunch of good sports psychology articles. So I used that and I talked to my coach, and I realized, I think one of the biggest things that article said is that it's really important that your why not have an external um, anything external, meaning your why can't be I want to go out and win races because you're
Right.
gonna blow up or burn out over time, right? So and I realized, like, beating people is not what motivates me anyway. Like I've always been much more of a team player. Like in high school, I loved team sports and I loved seeing what I could contribute to the team so that we could, as a group, win something. So I realized what my why is goes all the way back to that 10-year-old kid and my strength on the bike and how much I love how the bike brings my body and my mind together, and that I can really feel into what my legs are doing and all of that power and feel strong. So I go into every race thinking, gosh, okay, I know what I have to do here. What am I going to be able to do? Am I going to be able to do better than I did last year? Am I going to be able to manage, for instance, if there's bad weather this year on Mount Washington? How am I going to be able to handle that mentally? Am I going to feel like I made any progress with my mental state over that? Are my legs stronger this year? Um, there are so many interesting things about racing that are not related to winning. So I always try to approach it with, I've done all the work, let's see what happens. Let's see what we get today.
Proportionally, do you do as much mental fitness work as you do physical fitness work. And I say that in this way. I used to ride with a guy, and we would always comment to each other that the hardest muscle to train is the one that lies 6 inches between your ears. And if you can train that muscle, then almost everything else will fall into place. But oftentimes people are looking for that external validation. And when it doesn't show up, it's debilitating. And so the question I am asking of you is, do you spend as much time proportionally, right? Because if you go out for a 6 hour bike ride, maybe you're not sitting at home mentally training for 6 hours, but proportionally training the mental aspect of your training regimens?
Yes, but I don't think of it as training for the bike. I think of it as training for life, and I spend a lot of my waking hours thinking about this kind of stuff and how it applies to my life. Um, One of the reasons why we're quitting drinking and then adding meditation has been so beneficial for me is that I have spent most of my adult life being pretty chronically depressed, and not really understanding why. So, trying to understand my mind has always been really important to me as a way to heal myself. So, it wasn't until I quit drinking and I really couldn't run away from looking at how I was thinking and how I was managing things that I was able to really make progress with my mood. And it wasn't until I started meditating regularly and watching my thoughts and really getting to know how my thoughts drive the way that I feel that I was able to separate from that and understand that my thinking was causing my depression. And finally, for the past, I would say, year, about a year ago, I finally went off medication for the last time. And I haven't been depressed anymore because of all of this mental training. And the cycling has helped me get there, but it also reinforces all the mental training. And it it's just I have goosebumps. It's just such a phenomenally wonderful place to be because it all works together and it all keeps you healthy. You know, the exercise keeps you healthy and taking care of your thoughts and your brain keep you mentally healthy and they both support each other.
I
So,
find the mental aspect of sport, business fascinating. And I also believe like people come into your life for various reasons. And I don't recall how we got introduced, but I'm thrilled that we did get introduced because when we engage, like I go into this process of thinking constantly about different things and try to answer problems, that are happening in my life. But I know from the article that when I interviewed you, way back when in October, November, you had met somebody that had an impact on you. And it was a patient who was dealing with metastatic melanoma, a patient. And she said something to you that had an impact on you. And I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit and tell us what she said, because I often think that we're so fast to get through life sometimes that we don't even hear the things that are being said to us that can actually impact us. And so the idea that you were actually able to listen to her and take that and apply it to your life fascinates me.
thanks. Yeah, that was a really important moment, both in my personal development and in my whole outlook on cancer. And I did have a good friend at the time who helped me sort of talk through this and figure it out. But I had the bad mammogram, and then I went to the local city hospital to have a biopsy, which was difficult and pretty traumatic. And once I did that, they connected me with an oncologist there. And I thought to myself, I really want to go to Boston. I don't want to be up in the suburbs trying to deal with breast cancer. I'm close to a major medical hub. I want to do it down there. So, in order to go down to Boston, I had to get the samples that had been taken at the local hospital. So I showed up at the hospital to get them, and this woman was there to take me to the lab. It was sort of an out of the way place down a series of hallways that I wouldn't have been able to find on my own. So she said, "Oh, I'll take you. I'm an ambassador or whatever." So I said, "Thanks." And she said, "So my name is," and I can't unfortunately remember what her name was, but she introduced herself and she asked about me, and she said, "Are you here for cancer?" And I said, "Yeah, I was diagnosed with an early form of breast cancer." And she introduced herself and she said, "I have stage 4 metastatic melanoma." And I my heart immediately dropped and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And she said, "Oh, it's, no worries, I'm doing fine." And so I thought about that as we walked and I said, "Well, how are you doing fine with this?" And she said, "Well, it's not anything that's going to stop me." She said, I'm just like you. I am just like this person. I'm just like the next person. I'm just somebody who has a few more doctor's appointments than other people." And I thought to myself, wow, this was like a really advanced Zen master, right? She has it all figured
Right.
out, right? But I was feeling so wounded and like a victim myself, like trying to figure out how do I get past this. But, she her point of view, it was that we are all the same, and these bad things happen to everybody, but everybody's
Yeah.
bad thing is just a little bit different, and it doesn't affect day-to-day life unless you make it that way. So again, it comes back to your thoughts. If you think about this as, "Oh, my life is over. I am a breast cancer patient. I'm, you know, an invalid," or "I am," whatever you're going to tell yourself about it, that's going to determine your how you are going to be in the world. And the way she wanted to be in the world was the way she had always been. She's like, "So I have a few more doctor's appointments than everybody else." And I thought, okay, this was here for a reason, because this is exactly the way I want to be too.
Yeah.
And
Perspective is everything.
yeah, and you know, I got really super lucky in that my cancer was treatable with just surgery, right? I mean, I could have really been had to go through a lot of suffering. So I'm really grateful that I did not. But I do have a permanent oncologist and I do get regular scans. And actually, just last month, I was diagnosed with a skin cancer, and now I need to get a surgery on that. So, um, but it's just another doctor's appointment, you know? It's not anything that's going to interfere with my day to day life or make anything different unless I choose to make it anything different.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're going to jump into our rapid fire questions. But before we do, I can't thank you enough for sitting here today, but then our previous conversation for the magazine and the thoughts that you share on threads. For those of you who are watching on Instagram and have a threads account, make sure you follow Heather. It is SERIF224. Do I have that correct?
That's right.
Follow Heather because her comments are very thoughtful and they at least make me think, and I appreciate you for doing that. I know a lot of people are like, well, I go to social media not to think. Yeah, well, I want to think, and you always make me do that. So I appreciate that. And thank you for your time. So are you ready for our rapid fire questions?
Let's go.
So Ohm's not here, but this is obviously the question we ask everybody. Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Nay, no way.
Fantastic. Oreos. If you're eating Oreos, are you going old school classic, double stuff, or that new thing that they call thins, which is nothing but a cracker?
Oh my God, why would you bother? All old school all the way.
Licorice, red licorice or black licorice or no licorice at all?
Um, Definitely not black licorice. Like, just pitch that in a can right now. Red licorice, like, I guess if it's there, but there's so many better things to eat.
Easter just passed. Peeps are a big thing. So peeps, are they a real candy or are they nothing more than dust covered with like glitter, colorful glitter?
um, Definitely dust colored with covered with glitter.
I
I
don't
went to
understand how
a
they still
peep
sell these
frosting
things.
party once at a new job. Like the first day I started, it was right around Easter, and they said, "Oh, we're gonna have a peep frosting party." And I was like, "Who are you people? I don't know." Some
We
people
went.
love them.
There's a donut shop up here in Seattle called Top Pot. We went there last week, and they're selling a chocolate donut with a peep stuffed in the middle, which I clearly did not order. Just give me the regular powdered sugar donut. I'm good. Candy corn. Is candy corn a real candy, or is it earwax doused in sugar?
Definitely earwax. Not my
I
fave.
love this. We're hitting home runs today. Creamy or crunchy peanut butter or nut butter if you have allergies.
Oh no, I do both. I think they both have their merits in different places. I love crunchy peanut butter and oatmeal, but I love smooth peanut butter like on bread.
When you make a PB&J, are you putting the peanut butter and jelly on the same side and then smashing them, or do you put PB on one side and J on the other and then smash the two slices together?
I put the PB down and then I put the J right over it and then the bread.
How do you slice the sandwich? Are you going two rectangles, four squares, or four triangles?
Usually I don't slice at all, but if I do slice, it's on the diagonal. So two triangles.
Nice. Favorite flavor of ice cream is?
Oh, anything chocolate. Like chocolate mousse, chocolate explosion, chocolate. There's a really good ice cream shop in Cambridge that I love that has really good chocolate ice cream.
Is red velvet cake a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
I don't know. I never really cared enough to think about it. I'll eat it if it's there, but it's not my favorite.
It's just chocolate cake that they upcharge you for the red food dye. Which, by the way, you now have a mirror or a window into my brain on how I think about things. Like I'm thinking about red velvet cake all the time. Is a hot dog a taco or a sandwich?
Wow, that's random. Um, I guess a sandwich. I think it's closer to a hoagie than it is a taco.
Chocolate chip cookie or oatmeal raisin cookie?
Oh, chocolate chip, man. Definitely.
Are you
Eat
just
your oatmeal
anti
in the
raisin?
bowl. Yeah, I mean, oatmeal raisin's good, but chocolate chip's better.
Pumpkin spice or apple cider?
Ugh, apple cider. Pumpkin spice, nothing.
You can only eat one type of food for the rest of your life, meaning savory or sweet. Which are you choosing?
Savory.
Tuna salad, egg salad, or potato salad?
Potato salad. After like, a century bike ride, potato salad, man.
I like it. All right. So you're about to get blasted off into Mars. You're going to go hang out with Matt Damon. You're only going to eat sweet potatoes for the rest of your life on Mars. What's the last meal you're eating
Oh, before the sweet potatoes?
before you go up?
Um, what's the last meal I'm eating? Probably a really good steak,
So,
but it would have to be with a regular potato, like a russet potato, and not a sweet potato, right?
so
So I'd
you
eat
can
my
have sweet
russet
potatoes for
potato
the
and
rest of
say
your life.
goodbye, russet potato.
So I asked this question to Jennifer Comfort months ago, and it's by far the greatest answer to any question I've ever asked on a fireside chat. Her response was wheat thins. Like of all the things you can eat in life, wheat thins was the last thing she would eat.
One of my kids would probably answer that too. He's like addicted to them.
There's all these things. You can have red velvet cake.
Yeah. Well, it would probably be ice cream, but I don't think that would fill me up or give me enough nutrients.
Heather, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you chatting with me for these last 45 minutes. Check out Heather's Instagram feed and her Threads feed, SERIF224. And she is we did a story on her in our November, December issue of 2023 of our digital magazine. Check it out there. Heather, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.